So I think what social media does, obviously, is that it amplifies niche communities. So you'll have, like chili hates, right? Like people who love like chili, like coming together, maybe like traveling together to, the next like chili conference or something. But I think you see a lot more of those niche communities popping up and a lot in Asia as well. And you start seeing a lot more travel being congregated around these niche communities.
As WIT marks its 20th year in 2025, we turn the spotlight on our community to tell their stories and share their views on the evolution of online travel and technology. Conversations on Turning 20 is the collective story of WIT. As a Chinese saying goes, 以古为鉴,可以知兴替. By using history as a mirror, one can understand the rise and fall of things.
I started Seek Sophie in 2018, so newbie to the travel industry, really. And that's my first like foray in the travel industry. And obviously we had 2020, the pandemic, just when we were starting to find our feet. So I think I've seen a lot of changes in travel, but actually at the start of 2020, when I was asked to predict what was going to happen to the world of travel after the pandemic, all my predictions turned out not to be true, right? Because I expected COVID to fundamentally change how people were traveling. And actually that didn't. And you see that after COVID, people actually returned to traveling in a fairly similar way, I think, to how they were traveling before COVID. So people are slightly more open. Well, people, at least in Singapore and parts of Asia, are a lot more open to, I guess, nature activities, being outdoors, because they did a lot more of that in COVID. But that's not like a fundamental shift in behavior in terms of how they are choosing travel destinations. I guess the biggest change to how people travel came with ChatGPT. That's the one that I see like completely upend consumer behavior in a very short period of time. And a lot of people are using that as kind of their first touch point for travel. There's obviously the inspiration of social media, but that's always kind of in the background, and nobody really knows like how much to attribute, consumer booking behavior based on that. Because I think what social media does is it just makes people go to more of the same places. It just amplifies more of the same behavior but it's still the same behavior. Whereas GPT, I think, opens up a lot more possibility as to a little bit more bespoke ways of travel, because people can actually say, this is my preference. It's not obviously very accurate at the moment in terms of planning out trips. It still points people towards a lot of the mass market destinations. It doesn't fill the blanks in logistics as well as people want it to. But I think it's a matter of a year or two, right, before we can see like very bespoke travel recommendations that this can provide. So I think that is quite an interesting trend at the moment. The other fairly interesting trend, I guess, which came out of social media, got a little bit amplified by COVID, which I think will be amplified even more in the coming years, is niche communities. So I think what social media does, obviously, is that it amplifies niche communities. So you'll have, like chili hates, right? Like people who love like chili, like coming together, maybe like traveling together to, the next like chili conference or something. But I think you see a lot more of those niche communities popping up, and a lot in Asia as well. And you start seeing a lot more travel being congregated around these niche communities. So it's not a full on trend yet, but I think that will be quite an interesting space to watch, because you see, marathoners starting to like travel together, like for marathon vacations. People who bake bread that would come together in like Facebook groups and like Instagram communities, and they start to travel together for as well to like see this baker in Taiwan somewhere, for example. So I think you will probably see a lot more of that, especially when the Gen Z start traveling a lot more, because they're a lot more used to these kind of communities, and they have grown up in these communities, right? So these are their friends, and it basically like niches down as well. So I think in the next, 5 years, 10 years, that'll be quite interesting. Ultimately, I think travel is good for the individual, right? But I think a lot of people are now starting to talk about, what is travel actually doing for the communities in like cities. But then there's a lot of very destructive things about travel that people don't talk about. And I mean, that's obviously an untold story. That that's not sexy, right? And I'm not sure I'll ever be told like, how staying in a villa in Bali basically causes like so much water shortage that the locals don't actually have water there anymore. It's not even like pricing people out of homes, it's that there's no more water left for locals. There's no more, there's the wildlife has all been, you know, um, a lot of wildlife is abused in the name of tourism and all that sort of stuff. It's not a secret, but I don't think people talk about it or want to talk about it. So I do think there's a lot of destruction that um this kind of path is taking us down. Yeah, it's not a secret. One of the big challenges that I can see in the next 20 years, which I think I'm curious about, I don't know what a solution is what's tourism gonna look like in the face of overpopulation, right? We're at 8 billion, we're gonna go towards 11 billion people. It's in the last like 30 years, we've lost like 70% of our wildlife. A lot of tourism is to see these natural places, is to see like the wildlife. You already see the strain in a lot of places. Cities are seeing the strain. That's where you get a lot of the media from. But we work in places that are very off grid, and in national parks and things like that, and we see that strain quite a lot. And we're only at 8 billion. People are only getting wealthier. They're traveling more. We're gonna get to 11 billion quite soon, and I I don't know what our national parks are gonna look like, right? There's no land, there's no space like on the water for all these people who want to go see it. There's not a huge amount of wildlife to be seen, and that's gonna be less in the next like 20 years. So what's that gonna look like? And I don't know, right? You're obviously gonna see like quotas, you're gonna see things getting more expensive. Like that's gonna be government reactions to overpopulation and over tourism. But are you gonna see changes in travel behavior? Are people going to actively want to spread out a little bit more, and say, "Look, this national park is already overcrowded. Let's go see like these other places that might need the money." I don't know whether that's actually going to influence consumer behavior. You get to a point where you get pushed to the point where actually there are too many people in these places that you want to go to. Then are there like extreme ways to travel, right? People already talk about like space travel, but then there's things like, like neural experiential travel where people like plug things in your brain waves and then you actually get to experience the travel without actually going there. But that's like very far off, right? But when you start thinking about a world with, overpopulation and what tourism will look like in that face of that world, I don't think those things will feel that far off when we get there. But I think that's gonna be one of the biggest challenges in the next 20 years.